television viewing habits have drastically changed. The average household spent in 1950 about 4 hours a day total across all people in a household watching television. Today, that's over 9 hours a day on average. So the home has changed, the workplace has changed, how we get to and from places has changed, and all of it is pushing us to be more and more sedentary.
Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Dr. Gil Blander. Welcome to Longevity by Design, how to live a longer, healthier life. We are produced by Inside Tracker, your science-based guide to optimize your body from the inside out. Today on Longevity by Design, we are honored to welcome Dr. Diaz. Dr. Diaz is an associate professor of behavioral medicine at Columbia University Medical Center and a nationally recognized expert in sedentary behavior, cardiovascular health, and wearable health technologies. With a background in exercise physiology, he earned his BSc from Williams-Patterson University and completed his PhD in integrative exercise physiology at Tempest University. Dr. Diaz leads Columbia Exercise Testing Lab and Wearable Device Reading Center, and has published over 50 peer-reviewed papers in top journals such as Circulation, JAMA, Oncology, and Annual Internal Medicine. His research focuses on how movement patterns, particularly sitting, standing, and light activity, impact longevity, metabolic health, and disease risk. He is especially known for studies showing that breaking up prolonged sitting with brief bouts of walking, just a few minutes every half an hour, can significantly improve blood pressure, glucose level, and mood. In this episode of Longevity by Design, we'll dive into Diaz's groundbreaking work and explore why rethinking our modern sedentary lifestyle is critical to aging well and improving our health span. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Gil. It is awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome, and I'm really looking forward for our discussion today. So let's start from a bit of a background. What first drew you to studying sedentary behavior and its impact on health?
Sure. I'm an exercise physiologist by training, and us exercise physiologists, we sip the exercise Kool-Aid. We think that exercise is a cure-all, prevent-all to every chronic disease. And certainly there's a lot of evidence suggests it is. When I was a grad student, a news headline came out that caught my eye. It said something like, "Sitting is the new smoking, even if you're a runner." It was in a running magazine, and I'm a runner myself. And I read that headline, and I was like, there's no way. They painted it like sitting was the kryptonite to exercise. And I just, as an exercise enthusiast, someone who's dedicating his career to it, I didn't believe it. And so I set out kind of initially to try to debunk this whole notion or idea that sitting kind of is the antidote to exercise. And I set out trying to debunk it, and my mind has shifted tremendously in the last kind of 10 to 15 years that I've been studying sitting.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting, and it's a good example of sometimes you come with an hypothesis, and actually the hypothesis is wrong, and a good scientist will follow, okay, it's wrong, let's understand why it is wrong. So I really appreciate this introduction, and also explaining to our listener that science is not simple, and a lot of time our hypotheses are wrong. So let's continue with the background, and how did your training in exercise physiology shape your research approach?
Yeah, I think as exercise physiologists, we are trained to really rigorously evaluate and study, like, how does the body adapt and change when you regularly exercise day in and day out, right? So you want to study like your muscle physiology, your heart, you could study the brain. And so I took kind of that physiology of exercise and decided to apply it to sedentariness or sitting. What is the physiology of sitting and what happens when we sit all day. So instead of looking at how our body changes to exercise, my research looks at how our body changes when we sit all day.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So you're using the same tool, but asking a bit a different question that all of us are actually, as I said in the introduction, in the modern society, we are spending a lot of our time sitting, and we'll discuss it later. But why do you think a sedentary behavior has become such a major health issue now? What are the changes now versus, I don't know, the past?
Yeah, well, I mean, our world is changing with all the technological innovations that we've seen in the last, 50 years, 100 years. It's just pushing our societies to just spend most of our days sitting, right? So, while I'm sitting here talking to you, a million things could be happening now. Like I have a vacuum self-cleaning the floor. My, washing machine could be running, like washing my clothes. My food could be cooking in a microwave. Somebody could be out grocery shopping for me while I'm talking to you. Like all these technologies, like, don't get me wrong, they're great. But at the end of the day, what they essentially help us to do is spend more time sitting. I just one thing if we replaced, like, it's supposed to be like to give us more time back, right? But we don't replace that time that instead of grocery shopping, we'd be out exercising. Most of the time we spend it like doing more sedentary activity. And this has penetrated every aspect of our society. So like in the workplace, in the 1950s, we're talking about 16 million people worked a sedentary job. Today, about 60 million people, which is about 42% of the US workforce, work in sedentary jobs. How we get to places has changed. In 1950, people spent about 15 minutes in a car a day. Today, they spend about 55 minutes a day on average in a car.
Yeah.
Television viewing habits have drastically changed. The average household spent in 1950 about 4 hours a day total across all people in a household watching television. Today, that's over 9 hours a day on average. So the home has changed. The workplace has changed. How we get to and from places has changed. And all of it is pushing us to be more and more sedentary.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And even I'm thinking about a lot of us are working hybrid. Today, I'm working from home. So at least when I'm going to the office, there is a bigger space. So I need to go to the kitchen. And here the kitchen is like 5 yards from me. So it's much less activity. So I'm 100% agree with you. Can you, if we're trying to deep dive into the science of sitting, what actually happens in our body when we sit for a long period of time?
Yeah, right. That's the key question. Why is sitting so bad, and how is it separate from exercise? And so what we're learning is it's two things. One is we're learning is that our muscles are really important for regulating a lot of key processes in our body. So, for example, our muscles are really important for pulling blood sugar out of the blood, pulling sugar out of the blood, and helping to control and manage our sugar levels. And they're also really important for helping to regulate our lipid levels in our bloodstream. So that's kind of like our triglycerides, right? Our fats in our bloodstream. And so for the muscles to be really good at and regulating our blood sugar levels and our blood lipid levels, they need regular contraction or regular activation. When you don't activate them regularly, i.e. when you sit for hours at a time, they don't do that job really well. And so when you expose your body to higher levels of sugar and lipids chronically day in and day out from sitting all day, that leads to terrible consequences down the road in terms of developing things like heart disease, diabetes, etc. So the one thought is that sitting is bad because your muscles aren't contracting, and we need regular muscle contraction for optimal health. The other piece of it, the second part, is that the sitting posture itself can be harmful in that our blood vessels, or I like to think of it as like a hose, that, you want your hose nice and straight, but when you sit, you put a kink in the hose, particularly in your legs. And that kink in the hose causes what we call turbulent blood flow at the legs. And turbulent blood flow is not good. You want nice and smooth running blood flow. it also increases the pressure below your knee and in your legs. And so that turbulent flow, that high pressure flow, when you put a kink in the hose and you put a kink in the vessels, is really damaging to your blood vessels. And so the other thought is that when you sit for long periods of time, you expose your blood vessels in your legs to this really damaging situation or circumstance that can lead to the development of things like atherosclerosis, particularly in your lower legs.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely scary to think about it like that. And then I can come and ask you, okay, is a prolonged sitting harmful, even if I'm a runner like you? So is it harmful for someone that exercises a lot, or someone that exercises not a lot, but every day is less harmful than someone that sit all the day and not exercise?
Yes, this is an important question. What I want to make sure to underscore is that your exercise matters. That if you're an exerciser and you sit all day, you're still healthier than somebody who sits all day and doesn't exercise. Okay. So you're still reaping benefits from exercise. Don't get me wrong. I want to make sure that's very clear to all the exercisers out there. But if we were to study people who exercise and looked at who was more likely to develop chronic disease, those exercisers who sit longer will be more likely to develop chronic disease and die earlier, right? So you're sitting, even if you're an exerciser, your sitting habits still matter and still can impact your health and it doesn't offset entirely the exercise that you do, but you're just not as healthier. So your sitting habits still matter even if you exercise. And so it's not as simple as just saying, I exercise for 30 minutes in the morning, check that movement box off, I'm done for the day, I can sit the rest of the day. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And we know from a lot of laboratory studies that in addition to exercise, which is great, you still need periodic movement throughout the day because, again, as I mentioned, your body needs your muscles need regular contraction, and that sitting posture has to be broken up because of the kinks in the blood vessel we talked about. The exercise doesn't impact any of that stuff. And so you still need to find ways to move throughout your day if you want to optimize your health.
Okay, good. So a follow-up question for that. Okay, so I'm an exerciser. Let's say that I'm doing every morning an hour of exercise, and then I have 8 hours a day that I'm sitting. So what is more important, to reducing the total time of the sedentary time or of a sitting time, or breaking it up and let's say every 45 minutes go for a walk for 15 minutes?
I wish there was a clear answer. Ultimately, it's both.
Okay.
It's when we look at that's an important question. What is it? Is it just the volume, how much I just sit in a day, or is it that I sit for long periods at a time?
Yeah.
And what we find is that the combination of both is the worst. That sitting for a long period, like hours or large volumes, I should say, sitting for large volumes, so 10, 12 hours a day, and then sitting for hours at a time, so sitting for 2 hours, 3 hours straight without ever moving, that combination is the worst. And so it is about kind of lowering your volume and making sure that you're regularly breaking it up.
Okay. And I'm sure that you know there is now a lot of people that using a standing desk. So basically they are sitting for 45 minutes and then standing for 15 minutes or whatever. Is it beneficial, or it's just a myth and there is no value for that?
I would say the evidence is inconclusive at this point that standing is any healthier than sitting. There are observational studies, some that show that standing, the more time you spend standing in a day, lowers your risk for mortality. There are other observational studies that show the more time you spend standing, the greater your risk for developing things like heart disease or vascular complications of your lower legs. The literature or the science, we have people do this in the laboratory, similarly is somewhat mixed. It can be beneficial for lowering things like blood sugar, but the effects are lower than if you were to move periodically throughout your day. So I get this question all the time. Should I get a standing desk? Could it hurt? Possibly not, although there is some concern that can cause some musculoskeletal pain, maybe some issues with your lower leg vasculature. So my answer usually is, we know definitively that moving is better than sitting. So if you were to try to figure out what to do, standing desk versus just try to find a way to get some movement breaks in, I would lean towards encouraging everybody to find a way to get some more movement breaks in. Yeah, the standing stuff, I still think we need a lot more evidence before we can definitively say we should endorse that until everybody gets standing desks.
Yeah, that's very good to know. And for me, for example, I have in my office a treadmill that I'm trying to walk for, I don't know, at a very slow speed. So I assume that's movement. So that's much better than standing desk, I assume. But tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the active workstations, so things like treadmill desks, cycling desks, those are the kinds of things that for sure, undoubtedly, we know are healthful, beneficial. It's the kind of movement that our bodies need. And, I think for the listeners, a lot of times we think about like, how do you like walk and work at the same time? What we're talking about when you're walking, like you don't have to be going at a fast pace. I have a treadmill desk that I work on. I'm usually doing like at 1.7, between 1.7 and 2 miles per hour. So very slow walking, kind of uncomfortable. But I think as you do it, I think maybe there's a little bit of a learning curve adjusting to it, but it's something I think you get used to pretty quickly of how to walk and type and work at the same time. And at minimum, even if it's not doing like typing and walking, like if at least you can do your work meetings while walking, because you're usually not typing much during work meetings. I mean, I usually have like 2 or 3 meetings a day, an hour long. And so I can get 2 to 3 hours of walking in just if I walk or cycle during my work meetings instead of sit.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And that's what I'm doing, actually. It's not easy to type, but as you said, you have a lot of meetings, especially meeting with a lot of people in the meeting, that then most of the time you are listening. So it's pretty easy to just walk, and also to talk is not too hard. So yeah, walking on the treadmill, but also walking outside. Take shut off the video and put your earbud on and basically listen and talk and walk outside. That's not bad at all either. Thank you for that. And the next question, and sorry that I'm diving deep into that, but I think that's a very important point. How short can be the movement break to still be beneficial for health? So, for example, let's assume that, and you'll take the time unit, but let's say per hour. Should I move 1 minute? Should I move 2 minutes? Should I move 10 minutes every hour? And what is the a place that you are going to occur that say it doesn't matter? You can now sit another 50 minutes and forget about it, if there is.
Yeah, so we've tested it quite a bit in our lab, and 5 minutes is what I would recommend. You can get away with what we found was people who took 1 minute breaks every hour still improve their blood pressure by 4 to 5 points, which is great. But the 5 minute every hour, they improve their blood pressure, but what we saw is that they improved their mood and feelings. They reduced their feelings of fatigue and increased their feelings of being energized with 5 minutes walking every hour. And those changes were just as good as if you did it every half hour. So 5 minute walks every hour will improve your mood, reduce your feelings of fatigue, and improve your blood pressure. If you do 1 minute, you still see those same effects, but they're not as strong. So yeah, I think that if that's my recommendation, although certainly some people say, I can't get 5 minutes in. If you just did 1 minute, that would be pretty good. And start there and see if you can work up if you can.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. And curiosity, why have you decided to take the unit of an hour and not, for example, 5 or 10 minutes every 2 hours? So have you tried that, or you just decided, okay, let's look, hour is a unit that we know well, and that's why it's an hour?
Yeah, we're testing all doses right now. We have a study we're trying to figure out, like, if you move every half hour for 1 minute, to if you move every 2 hours for 10 minutes. And because I think we ultimately need, right, like what happens if I personally can't move every half hour. But if I miss every half hour, could I make up for it when I walk every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what we're trying to figure out right now, is trying to give people options. And if you happen to miss a break, could you just double it up later on? So we don't have the best answer just yet as to like what, if you only move every 2 hours, maybe if you move only every 3 hours, how long should you move for? Yeah. My intuition is you're probably going to have to like double or triple your movement, but we still need scientific evidence to.
And I think that's a good question, because as you said, sometimes I have a 2 hours meeting. So I have a workshop, and what should I do to compensate on the 3 hours of the workshop? So I think that it will be interesting to come say, okay, the rule of thumb is 5 minutes per hour, but if you are a sedentary for 3 hours, then you need to do 20 minutes. Well, whatever it is, I think that it's good to know. It sounds like you are still researching it, so we'll know soon. A follow-up question is it just walking, or can I go and do push-ups? Or can I ride a bicycle? Or can I don't know, lift some weight? What have you looked into that or not yet?
So our lab hasn't, but there have been a number of studies that have started to look at these kind of, call them like resistance training breaks, right? So, or body weight breaks, right? Where you're just using your body weight to do like push-ups or squats or something like that. That we're still seeing, the science is still showing promising effects when you just do those kinds of things of squatting, push-ups, etc., tricep dips, all those kind of fun things with your body weight. Yeah. I think the science suggests that the type of movement is less important as getting any kind of movement in. And so that's the key. So I wouldn't necessarily put my hat on it like, oh, I must do walking breaks. Like, do what movement works for you. I understand some people are kind of confined to or strained to like their desk area. Maybe you can't go walk out, down the hall. If you can do some type of body weight exercises to do it at your desk, or even if you just step in place at your desk, it's just about getting some muscle activation. That's the goal here.
Yeah. And I assume that part of it is also increasing the heart rate a bit. So even when you walk, don't walk in a pace of half a mile per hour, but you need to walk a bit harder to increase the heart rate, or it's not necessary?
No, not necessary.
Okay.
Now, key caveat here. Obviously, the more intense, the better. We know higher intensity physical activity is more helpful. Just to give everybody like some stats. So if you replace 30 minutes of sitting with 30 minutes of moderate or vigorous intensity movement walking, you'd lower your risk of death by 34%. If you replaced it with light intensity walking, 30 minutes of light intensity walking, you replace your sitting, you'd lower your risk of death if you did it daily by about 17%. Right? So 2 messages here. 1, any movement counts, doesn't matter the pace, you'll lower your risk. But 2, more intense activity is always better. And we know that. There's a time trade-off with that too. But in our lab, we had people, when we do kind of see how can we offset the harms of sitting with movement breaks, we have people walk at 2 miles an hour. And walking 2 miles an hour, which is a very slow pace, slower than most people's typical walking pace, lowers blood sugar, if we have them do it every half hour, lowers blood sugar, the blood sugar spike that you see after a meal, by almost 60%.
Wow.
That is almost the same amount that you'd see reduction if you gave a person medication to manage their blood sugar levels, like for diabetes. With just light walking. So my message to folks is like, I understand, like, I'm not asking you to sprint up and down a hallway in your workplace. Like your average typical walk is enough.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And so now I want to talk a bit about, now we have a lot of fitness trackers, and somehow I think that it came from Fitbit. They came with 10,000 steps a day. So what do you think about the 10,000? Is it the right layer, or is it just it was easier for them because it's a number that everyone can remember? And then what is the right amount of steps that we should accumulate a day in order to get a benefit?
Yeah, so I like the 10,000 because it's just something people easily remember. But, that came from, it was actually a Japanese manufacturer who was one of the first to make a pedometer. It was back in the 90s that they came up with that number just, because it was simple, easy for folks to remember, give them something to shoot for. And they didn't necessarily have any scientific evidence. It was just a marketing thing. The scientific evidence for 10,000 steps is not, I should say the scientific evidence suggests that the threshold actually is lower. The latest evidence, there's a we call meta-analysis, which essentially somebody went out and tried to summarize all the evidence that's ever been published on steps and health outcomes. The latest meta-analysis just came out last week, actually, suggests that about 7,000 steps is the threshold at which you achieve most of the health benefits from walking. So it's a little bit lower, maybe a little bit more doable for folks. 10,000 steps can be hard to accrue over the course of a day, and maybe it doesn't need to be that high. So 7,000, if I were to say what the scientific evidence is pointing us to, it's a little bit lower in the 7,000 range at this point.
Yeah, and a follow-up question for that. If I'm a person that do much more strengths, like there are days that I'm going to the gym and spending, I don't know, an hour or two doing a strength exercise, do I still need to do the 7,000 steps? Or at that day, I did enough with the strengths and it's not important?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to kind of the message I continue to put out there that, like, you still need to get movement throughout your day. And so I would see it more as like making sure your day is still like, that's the thing with the 7,000 steps. You don't have to do it all at once. Like over the course of your day, you just want to make sure your day was active enough that you had enough movement sprinkled throughout the day, and 7,000 steps is a good target. Make sure you're doing that. I don't necessarily think, like, if you went to the gym and did your strength training, that you need to go out and hit the treadmill and then walk afterwards. As long as you are moving throughout the day, that's the goal.
Yeah, it's like feeding in a way. You don't want to have one meal a day and then that's it. You want to spread it around because there are some macro and micronutrients that absorb slower, faster. It's hard to absorb too much, let's say, B12 in one shot. So it's better to... So the same here in a way. You want to move small pieces in a day. It's better than, as we started, than running a marathon and that's it. It's not as good as accumulating the step of the marathon over the day. That's a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's right on, Gil.
Okay, cool.
As a Longevity by Design podcast listener, you understand the value of improving your health for today and for all the years ahead. And if you want to live your healthiest, longest life possible, you need to understand what's going on inside. At Inside Tracker, we take a personalized approach to health span optimization that eliminates guesswork from your wellness plan. Inside Tracker analyzes blood biomarker and DNA data, along with physiomarker data from fitness trackers like Oura Ring, to deliver personalized food, supplement, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations that allow you to take control and improve your health span. And for a limited time, Longevity by Design listeners can get 20% off at the Inside Tracker store. So if you're ready to receive a personal health analysis and data-driven wellness plan to optimize your body for the long haul, then it's time to start inside. Visit insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today. That's insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today.
So let's continue with technologies. And now there are a lot of technologies. You can see I have many of them. I assume that you're using some. There are a lot of our listeners are using 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. What role do you see in wearable devices, and what are the benefits of them in your research?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is we're trying to get people to take movement breaks in their everyday life. And the number one, we ask people, like, we ask them to take breaks, and then we ask them how they did and tell us what your barriers to taking movement breaks in your everyday life. And the number one barrier everybody reports to us is they say they forgot. Like, I just was so engrossed in what I was doing that I just totally forgot to take a break. And so really become conditioned in our world to just, our body has a lot of sensations and signals that tell us, like, you need to move, you've been sitting for too long, and we've learned to ignore them. So much so that we forget, it's not like people sit there and intentionally try to move, like sit for 2 to 3 hours straight. I think we get so engrossed and we start ignoring our bodily cues. And so I see a real benefit in these devices of helping be a tool to kind of nudge us and remind us when we've been sitting too long. And so a lot of these devices have that kind of that nudge or that buzz that tell you you've been sitting too long. So it can be useful in that regard, but at the same time, we know people hate those buzzers and those prompts over time, and most people turn them off after a while. They just become annoying, and they're not like what I call smart nudges. Like, I don't want to be nudged when I'm in the middle of like a work meeting and I can't like get up and go take a movement break in the middle of my work meeting. So I think they can be a useful tool to help us like figure out that we have a problem and we have this habit that we have to break, and can prompt us in the right direction. But ultimately, I think we're going to have to move away from like relying on tech to like do it for us and move to like building it naturally into the rhythms of our day.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good like starter tool. I'm not sure if it's a long-term solution to everything that we have to rely on the tech to do everything for us.
Yeah.
The other piece of it too is what I think, it's not to bash the wearable tech. I think there's a lot of strengths to it. It's a really important piece of changing behavior is we have to know and be able to monitor our behavior. And I think these tools are really good for helping us to know, like, how sedentary have I been today? How many steps have I gotten in today? Like, we wouldn't be able to do that without this tech. And so having a number and to be able to quantify and know, did I have a bad day today? Did I sit for too long today? I think it's really important and really powerful and empowering for us to be able to change our behavior, to have these technologies, devices at our fingertips.
Yeah. So a smart person once told me, you cannot manage what you don't measure. So that's the second part that you mentioned, and I agree with you 100%. And the first point that you raised, I think that's a very smart point, is don't tell me that I need to stand up like the Apple Watch is telling me that every 50 minutes when I'm in the middle of the meeting, but you have the calendar. My calendar is also on the Mac. So when you see that the meeting ended, or I don't know, connected to the Google Meet or whatever meeting, and they see, then say, hey, Gil, you need to stand up. So hit me when I'm able to make the intervention. Don't hit me just at the routine at the 50 minutes of the hour, because I assume that it doesn't matter if I do it at the minute 50 or the minute 5 of the next hour. It's very close.
Exactly. And there are some tech companies and apps like working on, I've seen a couple now that are a little bit more smarter. So stay tuned. They probably will be available at some point if they're not already. But I would encourage folks to like use that tool, but then find ways to not have to rely on the tool or the tech. So your example, perfect one, Gil. If you start, and the aspiration here is to make this like brushing teeth. That is the gold standard behavior that almost everybody universally does. And you do it in the morning and you do it at night. Even if you don't want to, most people still do it because it's become so part of our routine that it's so integrated that like it's part of when I get ready for bed, this is what I do. Yeah. And so we want that same kind of behavior for movement breaks, right? So when you finish a work meeting, before you start your next task, your next meeting, take a walking break, right? Like build it into that routine that becomes part of it. So yes, maybe the tech can prompt you like, you just finished your work meeting in your calendar, according to now go take a walk. To like, I know, just routinize that I should habit building. Anytime I finish a meeting before I do the next thing, I'm going to take a walking break, right? And so we tie it into the cues of our day, just like teeth brushing is tied to the cues of our day, the rhythms of our day. Tying movement breaks to the cues throughout in the rhythms of your day is really, I think, the thing that we all should aspire to.
No, I agree with you 100%. And to implement behavioral changes very hard. I think that it's take like maybe 2 months until you really implement it. So start working on that. One of my colleagues, actually, she decided to start all the meetings that she's inviting people to at the 10 past the hours. And then suddenly I'm always confused because all my meetings starting and then I say, I have the meeting with her. And then I say, I have still 10 minutes. And then, okay, I'll go for a walk. So I think that everyone should try to find what is working for him or her. I think that each of us is a unique. For example, I'm not a person that can sit 8 hours straight. I need to walk and move. It's like after half an hour of thinking, my brain started to burn. My wife can sit 8 hours and come back home. So everyone should find whatever is working for me. So I think that in that regard, for me, it's easier because I cannot sit for 8 hours, so I will walk. But some people, like my wife, they need to find other strategies that will help them to stand up and move. I don't know, go to the restroom even every hour, and that's better than not moving. Or yeah. Or,
I'm glad you brought up the work stuff, Gil. We've studied this too. I think there's a perception or concern that like taking movement breaks is counterproductive to work productivity. And that is just not true. That one, we have a lot of data to show that movement breaks, actually taking them, improves work engagement and work performance. And I mean, there's a lot of science on like our brains are wired to like do like work hard for about 20 minutes of like really focused, high energy, high tension work, and then it needs a break. And so the movement break kind of aligns with a lot of the literature on optimal brain performance, that like you can only do focused work for so much time. And then there's a lot of literature on that movement breaks actually is you're getting blood flowing to the brain, right? And that movement breaks actually improves things like executive function, creativity, right? And so like getting more oxygen-rich blood to that brain is actually good for your work tasks. And so getting workers and employers to recognize that actually movement breaks is not counterproductive, actually is good for cognitive tasks, any type of tasks. And that the answer to good work performance is not to chain someone to a desk and tell them to work for 8 hours straight. That's not how we were designed to optimally work and be creative and do creative tasks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I have to say that for me, the best ideas that I came with are always when I'm cycling or walking, or because your brain is like a sponge. It's absorbs a lot, and then you need to start analyzing it. And it's very hard to analyze it when you sit next to the computer and look at it. But when you go to nature and look at the trees and see and a bit more relaxed, suddenly it starts to list what you absorb, and suddenly it's like, oh, let's connect A to B or B to C. So absolutely agree with you, but yeah, it's hard to change, the perception and what we are doing. As you said, from the 50s, that we are sitting from 9 to 5, and but we should find a way to do it. So that's taking me to a follow-up question about the wearables. Are they currently, maybe I'll start with an introduction. Currently, most of the users of the wearables are people like me that are more like biohacker, people that early adapters and all of that. But I'm not sure that population is the population that will benefit most for wearables. So in your opinion, if you will ask, what is the sweet point for wearable in a benefit for health? What population would it be, if at all?
I mean, ultimately, yeah. I don't need to get a device on you, Gil. You probably are exercising a regular habitual exerciser, and like, do we really need to track your steps and sedentary habits, right? It's the people who I worry about are like the people who are sitting most of their day and having a hard time finding means to exercise. So I think about like people who work at call centers where they like you have to work so many hours straight and have productivity requirements, or like bus drivers, cab drivers, right? People who just like have to like sit for their jobs and have no choice and can't even take movement breaks. Like those are the people I really worry about, who like, if we could just get a device in front of them and show them like, do you see how much you're sitting and how hazardous this is? I mean, they probably have a good sense already, they said enough, but I think about like those folks who just are already extremely sedentary. The other folks I think about where we really want to get these devices on are people who already have chronic diseases. So people who, already have diabetes, who already have heart disease. We know from research that their sedentary habits are the worst of all. And so getting devices on those folks are the ones, if it can be helpful to get them to moving, that's where we kind of see where the wearable devices may be most useful. I mean, my dream would be like hospitals give them out like at discharge, right? Like you give out a medication, like, all right, we just had, you just were hospitalized for some chest pain and we're going to give you some aspirin, et cetera, some blood pressure medication. By the way, here's a wearable device. Now go and wear it, right? Or maybe your primary care doctor should give it out. Like when you start getting diagnosed or your blood pressure levels start getting higher, or you're starting to be pre-diabetic, I need you to start exercising. Here's a wearable device to start keeping track of these things. That's where I would love to see this really go.
Yeah. And you're talking exactly on prevention versus treatment, and I cannot agree with you more. So speaking about clinician, I think that it's a good point. We have many clinicians that listening to this podcast. So how can a clinician better support patient in breaking up this sedentary behavior? What would you recommend them to do with their patient?
I think you have to start with just assessing it and asking about it. It should be a vital sign, measured every visit, just like you do weight and blood pressure, like asking about exercise, asking about movement, asking about how their sedentary habits. Like you have to start there with that conversation of you ask about it every visit. And I think it's part of your, whatever you're prescribing to your patient, like that's part of the prescription. I'm going to also talk about like, here are the things that you should be doing movement wise. I'd like you to see you doing, right? And there's a whole lot of literature on like just having a physician write a script for exercise is powerful and gets people to change, right? Because of how people revere doctors and listen to them, that writing a script alone. So I'm going to I would encourage folks, there's an initiative called Exercise is Medicine Initiative run by the American College of Sports Medicine. There's a lot of simple materials like they designed to make this, you can integrate this into your routine clinical care easily. Like I understand and recognize like clinicians are already burdened already and have so little time as it is. The last thing we want is for them to spend 30 minutes like having to behaviorally counsel somebody in exercise. But there are short and simple things that you can do about just asking with a couple 1-2 questions about the exercise and then just talking about it and prescribing it in a short, detailed way is a really good place to start. And there's a lot of materials where you can then provide and refer them to more resources to learn more about these kinds of things. So I would encourage folks to, if they're interested in learning more, there are some good resources out there. But to circle back, I think just starting the conversation where like it becomes part of your regular clinical care to ask about it and talk about it with your patients.
Yeah. And I haven't heard, and I'm interacting with a lot of clinicians, I never heard them asking or talking about what happened in the 8 hours or 12 hours or 10 hours that you are working. What do you do then? And I agree with you. That's based on what we discussed today, that's a major point that we can significantly improve the quality and the length of life of those people, but we are not paying enough attention to that.
And I would add too, I think there's what's really great about this, and that we're learning about not just exercise but the harms of sitting, is that you can tailor your prescription based off of a person's lifestyle and their time commitments. So like you might have somebody who says like, I'm a bus driver. I can't get movement breaks throughout the rest of my day or throughout my work day. And so I would sit there and then emphasize, okay, that's fine. Like we'll work with that. What I want you to do when you get home every day is we're going to make sure you're getting to the gym, getting enough exercise in. And then what I don't need is you sitting, like when you get out of work, is just sitting on your butt all day afterwards.
Yeah.
Like you're going to go for a walk after you eat dinner or something like that. Right. And so I'm going to try to figure out, like, I'm going to need to get them to the gym, but also last thing I need for them to just sit on the couch the rest of the day. Yeah. Or I might have somebody who says like, I have caregiver responsibilities when I got out of work. And like, I just can't possibly, like, I'm watching 2 young kids and I can't exercise after I'm watching them. But I have a job where like, I have some control over what I do when I do it. And I might just endorse them, just get some movement breaks in throughout the day. Like if I can't get you exercise, at least I'm going to get you some movement breaks throughout the day. And that's going to change your risk profile a lot, right? Yeah. So doing both movement breaks and exercise is the ideal, but you can tailor it based off of what a person's capable of doing. Or you might have people just saying like, I'm afraid to exercise, or I don't have the physical function or capabilities to exercise. And I'm going to say, that's okay. I can still get you, if we can just get you to move whatever pace you can, movement break wise, that alone is enough. So I think there's some tailoring that can go on based off of your patient's like desires, wishes, and restraints.
Yeah. No, and that's again a very good point in my opinion, because at the end of the day, it's very hard to change the schedule of a person 100%, but you can interject and change small stuff. So you said, for example, I'm a caregiver and taking care of kids. That's excellent. Go outside to the playground and play with them. Then you're moving anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So try to find the point. Or I'm a bus driver. I'm sure that the bus driver taking a lunch break. So take your sandwich and walk.
Exactly.
So everyone, I think that anyone can come with a argument that he can't do break. Everyone is making a break. Maybe you are not paying attention to your breaks, but you are taking a break. Even when you go to the restroom, so find the further away restroom. Or when you park in the parking lot, find the further away. There are so many things that you can do in order to add a few more steps.
Yeah. So the key here is, so, when you look at like, what are the biggest reasons people say they can't exercise or get movement in is that they don't have time.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if we were to compare exercisers and non-exercisers or movers and non-movers and look at their time demands and restraints, we all have the same, most of us have many of the same pressures, right? Like we work jobs, we raise kids, or we have to look after our older parents, right? Like the demands that an exerciser has and a non-exerciser has are largely the same or similar. And so it's not necessarily that one person has more time demand versus the other or more responsibilities versus the other. It's about our decisions about how we spend our time. And a lot of it has to do with our cognitive processes, that how we process and perceive our time and the decisions that we make. And so it is about kind of evaluating our time and just allocating time to movement. It's more that, because we all have the same demands in general. And it's just about making those decisions about like, I can't actually fit it in. I'm just going to have to figure out how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Watch 20 minutes less Netflix and you will have 20 minutes. Or I don't know, look at Facebook 20 minutes less. Anyway, the next question, and I really like that we discussed that for clinician. Another interesting population is basically the insurer and employers. So do you see a way for providing an incentive for breaking up a sitting time for both of them? And if yes, what are you envisioning to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit for employers. I mean, one, movement breaks actually improves work engagement and work performance. We have data to show that. And we understand now the science behind like our brains and how they operate and function, that like movement is actually beneficial for brain cognitive function. But there's also like, if you're an employer and ultimately you're worried about bottom line, your money, you're going to have a cost savings in terms of work performance and engagement, but also from your health insurance costs. So healthier employees are ones taking movement breaks throughout the day, that you have to recognize and understand that you're exposing, if you're an office-based, like most of your employees work or sitting, you're exposing them to an occupational hazard. And so actually building in and incorporating movement breaks throughout the day and allowing it for your workforce ultimately is going to save you in the long run on your health insurance costs. Right, because there's a whole slew of data to show now that it is cost effective, will lower the insurance costs from your employees. So I think from the economics of this for an employer just make total sense to do. So I think they have every incentive there is to actually endorse this. And I think we're long overdue in recognizing that sitting is an occupational hazard that we need to address and do something about. Heck, we used to get, like, smoke breaks. Like if people can get smoke breaks, like people can get movement breaks in, like, and so I think that's a really key point. From the insurance side, ultimately, when we've seen a little bit of this now, where like some insurers, give incentives for people who they register, every workout they do at a gym, they get some like rewards points, right? Some insurance companies are starting to integrate wearable device data into their, and you can earn rewards through the insurance company. I'd love to see more like you can reduce cost of your, reduce copays or something, like the more, movement breaks you get in through wearable devices. So I think there are ways in which insurance companies can leverage these wearable devices to encourage health prevention, preventative measures through wearable devices. And there are ways in which you can incentivize people doing movement breaks using the wearable tech.
Yeah.
And I think your question get at the bigger scale here, Gil, of like, how do we actually change our culture and society to incentivize movement and movement breaks instead of incentivizing sitting?
Yeah.
And I think changing workplace culture, changing things like what do insurance companies actually want to promote and endorse, and shifting the model from treating disease to preventing disease. And those are larger scale, loftier goals. But I think ultimately, if we're going to combat, our world is getting more and more sedentary every passing decade. And if we're going to change that, I think we're going to need to see large scale changes at the workforce level, at the insurance level, as well as elsewhere.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's not easy said and done. I'm talking about it for the last 15 years, and I'm not seeing a lot of movement. So somehow there is a resistance, which it's hard to imagine why, because everything is logical, what you said, but still the inertia pushing us to continue to do what we learned to do in the past. So maybe a small changes like providing them wearable and having, I don't know, every 5 minutes at the workplace, every hour, the last 5 minutes or the first 5 minutes are a break, and you can go or whatever. Find a way to do that. Again, I know that it's not easy, but definitely it is important. And we know that just adopting the right lifestyle and environment, you can literally gain almost 20 years of your lifetime of good health. So it's a lot of years for everyone, and also for the employer. Think about someone that is in 65 and he has so much knowledge, and he need to retire because he is not functional. If he can stay to 70, you gain 5 years of someone that is very beneficial for your organization. So they should think about that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Keith, let's, if it's okay with you, let's talk a bit about you. What is your daily routine look like for someone that is the expert in movement and preventing sedentary? What do you do that our listener can learn from? What are the tricks that you have?
Yeah, I mean, my hack is I got a treadmill. It's just a normal like gym treadmill, and I got this kind of kit that converts the treadmill into like a walk, like I could work and walk on the treadmill at the same time. So I didn't actually go out and buy like a walking pad or anything like that. I have my gym treadmill that I can convert into a walking treadmill when I need it, and then I can take it off when I want to run on the treadmill. That has been my primary means of getting movement in throughout my day. And so we mentioned this a little bit before, that most work meetings I'm walking on that treadmill. And unless I'm doing like heavy riding, most of the activities that I'm doing are on the treadmill. But it's not sustainable for me to, like, you can't like walk all day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tiring. It hurts. Actually, it's not good, I don't think, either musculoskeletal wise either. So maybe a key thing I want to say to everybody is like, the chair doesn't have to be the enemy. Like, it's just that we do too much of it. Yeah. And finding a way to balance like sitting with some more movement. And so the active workstation for me is we have also in our conference room at work, a cycle desk. And so I'll hop on that thing during a work meeting, and I get 8 miles in a 1 hour meeting. I mean, we're talking a couple of work meetings in a day. I'm getting 16, 24 miles. Like, who needs to even go to the gym anymore? I can get that much just, So I think the active workstations has been a really important key for me of getting movement in during the day. The other strategies that I use that I find work, like if I'm on the phone talking, I'm walking. Like, why do I need to sit and talk? Unless I need to like be doing like looking something up on my computer, I'm walking and talking on my phone. The same with work meetings, especially if I have one-on-one meetings. I'm taking that person. Let's just go out and walk outside and talk. We can do this talking and walking. Or if it's cold outside or too hot outside, we're just kind of roaming the halls, walking back and forth up and down the halls, and just kind of sneaking it in. Anytime I'm talking, I'm trying to walk. The other things I do are things, they're silly strategies. Like if I got to go to the bathroom at work, like I'm going to go to the further bathroom, not the one that's like right next to my office. Things like, I have a smaller water bottle instead of a large one. So like, yeah, could I get a water bottle that holds 64 ounces of water and that's all I need to carry for the day? Or I have a small 8-ounce one that I have to like go regularly to fill up. Right. And so those kind of strategies are the things that I use during my work day. The other stuff that I do is just more like, I just try to like outside of work, walk where I can. So like, do I really need to drive my kids to school or could we all walk together? And actually, like I like walking them because it's like extra, if I drive them in a car, it's like 2 minutes of quality time with them. If I walk them, I get like 15 minutes of quality time with them. I like it. The kids like it. Family walks after dinner have become our routine that we all look forward to doing, and it's family quality time, but also the timing of walking after a meal is really important, things like that. I would also encourage, I don't have a pet, but I really can convince that dogs are really important for like getting people active and moving if you're looking for tricks and tips of walking the dog. Yeah. Anyway, those are I think a lot of the things that I do typically to try to like sneak more movement in.
That's great. And the point that you mentioned with the kids, I think that's an important point because it's basically you can kill two birds in one stone in a way. Because first you are working with them, and you benefit and also benefit the quality time. But second, you are teaching them that walking is important. And then it's much easier to teach someone when he's young than older. So I think that the benefit is both for you and your next generation, which is all of us are worried about our next generation.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like modeling that behavior for your kids, so they see like, oh yeah, like we have bikes and we try to bike. Like we'll sit there and think like, do we need to drive our car to like go to the convenience store? Can we ride our bikes?
Yeah,
right. Like and just getting them to think about like, oh, like movement. I can do that. I don't have to rely on like a car to get to places. I can use my body to go somewhere.
Yeah, bike, walk. Yeah, absolutely. So that was a great. Thank you so much. A few more questions about the future. So what next for your research? Any exciting studies in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I may have mentioned it, I think, a little bit, Gil. I think we're still trying to figure. My goal is, right, the current guidelines for sedentariness or sitting is sit less, move more. And I think those are terrible guidelines. Like you got to give people a number and we want to give them a very specific prescription of what they need to do. So our lab is really trying to figure out what is the dose of movement that you need to offset the harms of sitting. So we're doing what we call a dose finding study. We're testing 25 different types of movement breaks to figure out what works and what doesn't, so we can give people options. Because we know that not everybody can move every half hour. And so we want people to have the flexibility to fit in what is scientifically proven to work to offset their harms from sitting. So that's kind of our current big study ongoing. We just wrapped up another study where we're trying to figure out, is standing actually a healthier alternative to sitting? With some really interesting, promising results to come soon. And then kind of our next frontier is, I think we've done enough laboratory studies now to pretty definitively demonstrate that movement breaks helps and is a strategy that the public should adopt to offset the harms of sitting all day. We are now moving into the space in the real world of like, how do we actually help people do it? And what systems have to change in order to like facilitate it. So that's kind of the next frontier for us of how do we get design intervention, how do we design strategies for the public to actually help uptake and adopt this in their real world.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the result of those studies. But just for our audience, what I heard today, and again, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, that the best or topic situation is 5 minutes of some activity every hour. That's the topic, and if you do an hour, 1 minute, it's better than nothing, so it's still good. So don't come say, I don't have 5 minutes, I don't want to move. I can't move. One last question, I promise, is if you had a magic wand, what one intervention would you implement in population-wide?
I would change our school systems to be designed not to have just make kids sit all day. And I would design classrooms that were just more like naturally allowing kids to stand, move, fidget, whatever, just to like let them just naturally just move their bodies as the classroom would allow, and not just constrain people to be in their chairs. And maybe that's maybe a pivot from what we've talked a lot about, Gil. I'll explain where that comes from, is that I'm convinced that that's where it starts. That beginning when a child turns 5 and enters into the school system in kindergarten, that is where we start training our bodies to ignore any bodily cues, that we need to stand up and move, and that we just learn that it's a learned behavior, that we learn that sedentariness is what we're supposed to do day in and day out. And I've had kids at that age, they're older now, but like I saw firsthand, like before they went into kindergarten, like they never sat still. Like if you got them to sit still for more than a half hour, like the only time they ever sat still for more than a half hour was when they were really sleepy or tired, or if I put on a movie. Other than that, like they don't sit still. And I think we start forcing kids to sit still, and we start teaching that we ignore those cues, those sensations that our body should move. And so I'd love to kind of shift. I think the intervention has to start like at that level where like we promote and endorse, like it is okay to get up out of your chair and move and listen to your body, because your body is always sending you cues that you're stiff, you're tired, you're fatigued, you need a break. And we're taught to ignore those sensations. I think if we started in the school system, we would learn that behavior, and it would carry through our lifetime, and it'd be socially acceptable and the norm to move. Instead, it's the opposite. Like I'm always the weirdo. Like if I'm walking on a treadmill during a meeting, like people are like, who is this guy? Like, why is Keith standing in the back of the conference room? Could you sit down? This is awkward, right? Like where it becomes the norm, right? So that's why, obviously I would love to see some interventions for adults in the workplace, et cetera, and movement breaks from around the world. I think it's got to start. It's got to start in the schools where we learn this norm of sitting.
Yeah, I love it, and I agree with you. I think that we need to start with the next generation. We should do whatever we can, but it will be very hard to train a mature adult. But it will be much easier, population-wise, to go and say, okay, in the kindergarten and so on, I know have like a walking desk and some bicycle and whatever, and I know even design the school that not that the next class will be the closest room, but maybe the further room.
Yeah.
There are a lot of small things that you can do in order to change that behavior. So I 100% agree with you, and I love your point. It's a very good point that I haven't thought about, so it's good. I haven't like it more. Okay, so I think we are coming up on our time. Thank you so much, Keith, for being here. Looking forward to exploring the research in the field of longevity each week with you and other leading scientists. For more information, please go to www.insatracker.com/podcast. Thank you so much, Keith. That was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to hear the result of your follow-up studies that you are running right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on, Gil. This was great.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by Inside Tracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit insidetracker.com/podcast.